Well, everybody, hi and welcome back to the channel. This is a video about conversion kit, about the truck series. You know that on my channel you will find both of the videos of the stuff that I make here. So basically it's about race cars, planes, and commercial vehicle and trucks or tractor, depending from the moment. This is right now the temporary assembly of my kit related to what I call the early Fiat H cab, produced by Fiat, veicoli commerciali, commercial vehicle in the 70s. They started the production of this cab in 1970, exactly 1970, and it was taken after the Unique from France. A company Unique was a company making trucks in France in the same era, which will become part of the group Iveco in 1975. They make all these European manufacturers that included Fiat, Lancia, the remaining part of Alfa Romeo of the same group, commercial vehicles of course, Unique, Magirus Deutz, and they were placed all together, the Iveco group. But before this they started to switch from the original cabs produced in the 60s. That was the Chinese 6, the Baffo series, the Mustachi version. It was the other cab which I produced in resin. It is a truck that is, by the way, still completely active in Africa, and this version is indeed produced and have been produced now, not any longer of course, and still quite active in South America. You have many videos online of these trucks. This is a 619, the name of this vehicle, and still going around and still working, because they were very simple truck, you know, just motor and basically no electronics at all, no helping in the driving. So they were quite difficult to drive and required really that the driver was a skilled one to drive it in the proper way. You know, this is the conversion related to the first version produced by Fiat. The first version was characteristic because they used it to have a low roof. You see, it was a low profile roof, which was which have been increased during the years before with the 170 model and with the 119, which is the basically what this blue plastic is related for, because I'm using this conversion to show up how to do with the recently reissued 119.38 Iveco truck, the Cowboy, reissued by Italeri, and you recognize from this blue plastic, you know, the previous version of this issue had the red plastic, and or the white one if you take a Magirus Deutz version. You know, the Magirus was basically different from the ordinary Fiat in the engine unit, which didn't feature the V8 motor for the 190. That is this unit, which is basically quite wrong for the 619, because they used the 6 inline motor without the fuller gear shifter. You know, this was the fuller gear shifter. Instead they had an ordinary Fiat or ZF unit for a gear shifter, which also was slightly separated from the motor unit. You know, this was the part which I will not keep on building because it's anyway wrong. So Italeri provide in their kit just the V8 unit or the 10-cylinder air-cooled from the Magirus Deutz, but they are wrong for this type of truck because they never used the V8 engine. The V8 only will appear on these Italian trucks since the Fiat 170 produced in 1975. But that's it. You know, the point is that is, in my opinion, kind of nonsense to evidence the motor and make details to this type of unit, despite is also wrong. You know, unit, motor and the gear is completely wrong, but it's a nonsense because this type of early Fiat truck didn't have the reversible cab. You know, the reversible cab just arrived for the Italian trucks of this series, just in the 1975 with Iveco making the 170 with the proper V8. It was the green truck that you will find also on my channel, you know, which I also made the complete cab in 124 scale for that one. You know, this is a kind of extract that I did from all the trucks that I produced in resin to allow modelers around the world to be able to produce this type of trucks, and even more if they like the South American vehicles as well as some African one, but mostly South American vehicles, because they were produced, these trucks were produced also in Argentina. So Argentina had the assembly line of these H trucks, H-cab trucks until the early 90s. So it was a truck that really lasted much more, while in Italy they stopped to produce them. Well, like this one with the low roof and the pure H-cab, they basically stopped in 75. Then it was evolved in the 190, it was evolved in the Turbo Star, in the Cowboy, so it became completely another truck until the arrival of the Eurotech Eurostar series, in the 90s. And of course, Europe have different criteria on homologation of the truck, mostly about the pollution and the safety system, so they cannot be used like they are in other countries in different part of the world, but they are quite famous all over. There is a lot of web pages and Facebook pages of truck drivers from the wherever in the world, that they use this type of trucks with all the kind of weathering that you can imagine. An important notice to add is that mostly when you see my videos talking about these trucks, I am referring to the Italian specs vehicle, not to the European or African or wherever in the world version, because they were quite different. For example, the original 619, which is this truck, used in South America, for example, had the Fuller gear shifter, had this unit. So it was correct for a South American truck, but it's not correct for an European truck. For an Italian truck, is not correct. So you have every time to check time by time which exact model of truck and which country we are related for and we are talking about. Because if it is Europe as well, for the driving side, I made this truck. For example, you can see here, this is also part of the conversion and so on. The filter is different, because they had a kind of filter that arrives straight with this piping straight down in the air filter down here, that oppositely from the 190 from Italeri that is placed horizontal, that became vertical. So you have to adapt this final part, this junction, this connection, to the turned upside down part coming from the Italeri kit. So you have to study a little all the parts, and if you don't have documentation for your own truck or for the vehicle that you want to do, you can just ask me, because I have a folder with thousands of picture and technical design about this stuff. As well, for the driving side, you can see that from here, I hope from the camera you can see the driving side on this Italian vehicle was on the right side of the vehicle, while the European one, if you take a Dutch vehicle, if you take whatever vehicles, they were mostly on the other side, so they were on the left side of the cab. So this is also important. In the same way, to take it away in the cab, I hope that you can see down there in the cab here, I moved the position of the gear shift, and which usually could be, if it was a Fuller, it have to be up here on the tunnel. Instead, being a ZF, it have to be down there, because it was just a long lever folded like a big L coming up near to the driver's side, and it is slightly different. So this is just something that you will see when the model is complete, and as I said, it is nonsense to update in the proper way for me for this type of showing up model. The motor unit with the proper 6 straight in line part, which maybe you can also take from a model coming from the MT brand or Revel brand. They made a lot of American trucks with quite similar straight 6 inline motor. Externally they look basically similar. It's different, of course, for the oil cap and probably for all the gouges around the motor. They are different, but the structure is anyway straight 6 in like the Volvo, the same identical unit, but as I said, it is a nonsense to do this type of work, because this type of truck didn't add the reversible cab in the Italian market. So they just had this HS port with a handle that I made down there, that is a little hole up there. I hope you can see there. And basically this door open up and it show the main vent and the radiator inside before the motor, and all the motor have to be inspected or by inside here from the tunnel or from here, and in desperate occasion they simply unplug all the cab in the garage and they work directly on the chassis on the motor from above without taking up the cab. But it was not possible to have the ordinary reversible cab. That's why you have to keep a special attention to the dimension and from the distances that you will have between the front bumper and the side step. In this model that I built up, the side step, as you can see, one is scratch build and another one is in resin. This is because I'm working with the leftover parts of the kit. Usually I prefer to sell the nicest one that I have in resin, while the leftover parts I keep it for myself. An important notice is about the grill, because the front grill that I sell in my kit is featuring still in front of this the Iveco Group logo in the front, which again is perfect if you want to go for a truck coming from the South American market or from the African market, but it is not good if you want to make a pure truck, pure Italian truck of the 60s. So for this, it's not a big issue, because basically on my resin part, the Iveco logo is just a kind of label glued over here in resin. So just you take a blade, you cut it that way, and you reshape the line here between the two grill and so on. So very, very easy work. Most important is that you have basically to scrape away the line here, because this part also in my resin kit is coming directly as an extract form from the 170 truck, which I produced as a unique cabin. Unfortunately, at today is completely sold out, so I don't have it still for sale available. Another part that you will find in the kit is about the arrow. This side arrow here, they are a little more exposed. They were made to be on the line, to be external to the front wheel arch, and that's it. Basically, the work where you have to pay the most attention is basically when you have to retake in shape the upper part of the front frame, which here basically what did I do? Instead of working closely to the guarnition of the front upper part of the windshield, I cut it a little more widely open, coming from, I think you can see from the part here what I cut there. It is on that part, so you basically don't cut it in the front, but you cut under here, which is also quite easy to do. Both of the parts have been reworked in the same way. White plastic was coming from the Magirus, the blue one is from this cowboy, but you basically save the front part of the frame, which gives you a little more room to work better on the corners and so on, because of course coming from that part, this side of the corner are not properly made in. So the steps to do it properly is use the ordinary part from Italeri, and you have to modify this front shape using the grill like a dime, and you basically replace in plastic this side and this cornice under. It's quite easy. If you have a picture and you place it in front of yourself, you cannot go wrong. It's not that difficult work, Also because this plastic was a plastic that in the original kit is much wider, is much bigger, coming from the 170s on this side. So you just have to cut it in position, cut it in shape, make it something maybe under if you want. In the Fiat 697 from Reinhardt truck, which I made some years ago, I didn't place anything behind the grill, but it's the same stuff. Here I left some plastic to have like a structure where to place over the front grill, and that's it. So the lower part of the cab don't have this particular issue. It's quite easy. Of course, you have to fill it down this corner, which in the Italeri kit is slightly separated because they had a different front opening side, for the inspection of the motor. And as I say, the upper part of the frame have to be reworked, so you cut a little bit widely. I think the part of the ordinary frame from Italeri ends up here, so you cut slightly before. Take the dimension from the side window, the side window is here, and the front window have to be mostly on the same sides and on the same line. As you can see from here, you see the line is basically the same identical one. When you have this frame in position, you glue the upper part of the frame to the rest of the cab, and you assemble the three sides around, placing the resin roof over that. The resin roof can be placed with the final edge, which I made it here in resin, arriving on the back of the plastic part. I hope you understand what I mean, in the way that you don't have to work on this corner, being this corner made in resin, but this is made in plastic, which is quite more easy to work, and even more easier later to place the line drop, the waterline drop here around the cab. This waterline drop, you will make it simply applying before under the part in resin, just a stripped styrene coming under to this way, so it's glued under to this, under here, and under on the same part here on the back, and then you can of course refill with a little filler the line up here to close all the welding, because this is anyway resin, so of course there is some imperfection in the final cut here of the resin. And when you have produced basically this three side 1, 2 and 3 water line around the cab, then you start to work on the front end. But how? First of all, you completely fill it up, the corners here, this corner and this corner, and you fill it up with, I made it with ordinary putty here, it's ordinary plaster from Revel, but you can also make it with ordinary super glue and some filler to have material, to have a structure under there. You know, I don't know if you can see from under there, if there is something that you can see down there in the corner. Maybe you can see that down there, down here. And when this structure became completely dry, then you can apply the final coat, gluing just in the side points with super glue, a strip styrene that is already quite smaller than this, you know, so it's on the proper dimension, while the side one are easier because you can also take ordinary plastic or the little wider band stripes of plastic, and then you just refine it in your way when it is you so in position, so it's much more easy to work this way than obtain directly a straight line. If you want, if you are a skilled modeler, you can do it both ways, you know. And there's really final part when you are done with this, then you finish the side corners of the front drop line with the side drop line which you already made, and then that's it. This is a separate part of the drop line, but also it is quite easy because then you folder the opening line of the main door, which is here, and then you have it basically. Then you have this unique cab, and then it's done. And I don't think it's so difficult job, you know. I think it will be much more difficult without any of this part in resin. And if you have basically to recreate something like this, many modelers try to use the inner side part produced by Taleri for the inner part of the roof, but the problem is that is way much smaller, so all this part will be about 5 mm per side smaller on each side, so you have to increase all the dimension, and increasing all the dimension you will lose completely all the shape of the roof because it becomes really up and down, up and down, up and down, because it's kind of bulged. And if you place strips in the middle of 5 mm and 5 mm like a cross to enlarge on the four sides, then you will have big trouble in keeping it straight and keeping it back to the shape. That's it. So that's it. This is the final step. One little more notice about the model is that I'm going to make a 619 from the Italian market, and what was different was, as I say, that the motor unit must be changed. And one of the most evident difference that you will find with the ordinary V8 unit with the fuller gear shifter will be that the Italian trucks basically had the motor separated by a joint connection. You know, the leverage of the gear shifter were visible from up here, so all the gearbox was a little bit separated from the motor unit. It means that instead of being in this position, here, it will be separated, and the gearbox will be a little more lower down, basically in this position. So also the transmission will be a little slower and a little different dimension, not so difficult, you know, they are tubes, so it's quite easy to work with them, quite visible also if you are going for to make a T version, you know, a tractor version. And another point that must be retaken, you know, in the Italian model is that basically when they made the 190s, the front suspension was slightly different from the early version, so it was much longer and larger than the original 619, so you have to make it a little bit shorter. And that is all a part that will be anyway a little bit hidden under the cab, not reversible, so also that is a part that is up to you to decide to modify or not. What for sure I will modify will be the final part, so this line coming from the chassis, which in the 619 was much more slider this way, you know, had to become this way to fit and be hidden much better under the smaller front bumper. That's it. And of course, being different, the schema of the items in the chassis, so the gearbox is in a different position, the transmission is in a different length. Of course, all the main bones must be modified. The most evident is the last one, which is not like provided from Italeri, that is this straight line probably coming. This is not correct, you know, for 619 have to be bulged this way with the nerve over, so it is still not completely made, still not completely done. I just placed it in position to have something to work with, to have some stable dimension, which to make the proper size mostly for the wheelbase. You know, the wheelbase in all these type of trucks never changed during the years, so basically the 619 have the same wheelbase of the ordinary T version, the short wheelbase version, so we don't consider the version used in the European market with different single drive in the front of the main drive. So this is the standard version of the Italian 690, and I will use these resin Continental tires which I produced some years ago. They are basically the same tire Continental coming from the Busig from Revel. Basically the rear one is extremely similar. The only difference is that you have to take it away, the reduction here on the central hub, you know, it was this way, it was slightly different, and mostly the real difference is on the single front axle, which I made from even from the Revel truck, but modifying the central hub, which have to be made a little more simpler, you know, a little more this way, and still saving anyway the resin pattern from the Continental. To have the pattern made in resin instead of rubbers allow you to work so much more on a side effect to be used, you know, to be really consumed like all trucks usually are, because here you see you still can see the pattern. This is a solid resin, you know, while if you take the rear double one, if you take this one, this is in resin, this is in rubber, and you see that is basically impossible to take away the patina and to take away the brand new effect on the new tire, which instead you can do on this one. You know, if you take this resin tire, this is much more easy to make some effect and weathering in the following in the following steps, you know, on the painting. And that's it. I will use the Continental tire, as well as I'm planning to cover them with a fully closed wheel arch fenders if you are American, and that's it. So they will be in this position, retaken in the same dimension. There is picture of them with the closed, completely closed rear wheel arch, so will be something that cover this type of tire, you know. That's why I didn't went for the 3LX6. They are still anyway available. Those here are the 3LX6 with the Michelin tire here. As you can see, this is the pattern of the Michelin tire, and this is the pattern of the Continental tire. I made both of them in resin. You know, you will find as usual all my prices on my website, also latino.com. And if you have any question and doubt, just keep in touch to me and just drop me a mail. It's much better to contact me via mail instead of writing me on social media, because I cannot very often read the message that I get. I get too many of them are just spam, so I don't open it so often. So that's it, guys. This is the status of our condition of what I'm doing here, and it's really enjoying, you know, because I like to take this separation moment between my racing cars. You know, after I made that huge project that was the Huracan GT3 from KMP, I'm back now on my tracks, which they're extremely relaxing, and for me extremely beautiful to be completed in this way. They are always related to historical vehicle, to historical Italian trucks that made the history of transport in Europe. You know, they were, of course, I'm selling this stuff all over Europe. So this is currently available now. This is March 2026. So if you have any question, any doubt, don't hesitate to contact me, and hope you like the video. As you noticed, probably from this year I will not have any longer a constantly scheduled weekly video producer, and should just activate the notice and advertisement on my channel if you want to be updated constantly on the videos that I am making, because I will not have a constantly scheduled. So it mostly depends when I have the time to do this type of videos, and basically coming from what I have on my desk at the time. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.